Welcome to Danger, the channel where we dive into the world's most chilling true crime stories. Please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can get notified every time we post something. Gabby Petito was 22 years old when she disappeared during a cross-country road trip with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, in 2021. Her case became one of the most widely followed missing person investigations in the United States and eventually developed into a homicide investigation. Gabby was from Blue Point on Long Island, New York, and was known for her creativity, interest in photography and love of traveling. She wanted to create travel content and share her experiences online. Brian Laundrie was someone she had known since their teenage years, and they began dating in 2019. Their relationship quickly became serious, and later that year they moved to Northport, Florida, where they lived with Brian's parents. In July 2020, the couple became engaged. Rather than immediately planning a wedding, they became focused on the idea of buying a van, traveling around the country and documenting their experiences online. In 2021, Gabby and Brian prepared for what they hoped would be an extended trip across the United States. They traveled in a white Ford Transit van that Gabby had helped turn into a small living space. Their plan was to visit national parks and other scenic destinations while Gabby created content for Instagram and YouTube. On social media, their journey appeared almost perfect. Their photographs showed them exploring mountains, deserts and national parks, while their posts presented the image of a young couple enjoying freedom and adventure. On August 19, 2021, a video was uploaded to their YouTube channel, Nomadic Static, showing clips of the pair traveling, laughing, embracing and enjoying the scenery. The video later became especially striking because it presented a peaceful and romantic image of their relationship, while evidence would later reveal that serious conflict had occurred during the trip. The couple traveled from New York toward the western United States during the summer of 2021. They visited areas in Colorado and Utah before eventually reaching Wyoming. At one point, Gabby was still regularly sharing photographs and communicating with family members. However, traveling together in a small van meant that the couple spent almost all of their time together, and tension reportedly developed between them. One of the most important events in the entire case happened on August 12, 2021, in Moab, Utah. That day, a witness called emergency services after reporting a disturbing confrontation involving a man and a woman who were later identified as Brian and Gabby. The caller reported seeing what appeared to be Brian striking Gabby and chasing her during an argument. Police later located the couple's van and stopped them. The officers who stopped the van recorded their interactions on body cameras, and the footage later became one of the most analyzed pieces of evidence in the case. Gabby appeared visibly upset and was crying while talking to officers. Police separated Gabby and Brian and questioned them individually about what had happened. During the police investigation, Gabby and Brian gave their own versions of the argument. The police report recorded that Gabby had struck Brian and that he had visible scratches. Police did not make an arrest and ultimately separated the couple for the night. Brian was given accommodation at a hotel, while Gabby remained with the van. At the time, officers classified the situation in a way that did not result in criminal charges. The incident became extremely controversial after Gabby's death because the original 911 report had described a witness seeing Brian allegedly strike Gabby, while the later police assessment focused heavily on Gabby's admission that she had hit Brian. An outside review later identified mistakes in the handling of the incident. After the police incident, the couple continued their journey. According to later accounts, Brian flew back to Florida for a period to deal with a storage unit before rejoining Gabby. The couple's travels then continued toward Wyoming. Gabby continued posting on social media, but information later emerged suggesting that she was having doubts about her relationship. On August 22, she contacted an ex-boyfriend named Jackson and reportedly referred to problems with Brian and the possibility of ending the relationship, although she appeared uncertain about how to do so. This later became important because it suggested that Gabby may have been thinking about leaving the relationship shortly before her death. Gabby's final Instagram post was made on August 25, 2021. The photograph showed her smiling in front of a butterfly mural. Around the same period, she was traveling through Wyoming with Brian. On August 27, surveillance footage captured Gabby and Brian together at a Whole Foods store in Jackson, Wyoming. This footage became one of the last confirmed visual records of Gabby. On the same day, Gabby contacted her ex-boyfriend through Snapchat and later attempted to call him. He was unable to answer because he was working. These details became part of investigators' efforts to understand Gabby's state of mind and reconstruct the final days of her life. The events that followed became increasingly mysterious. Investigators later examined Brian's movements around the Spread Creek camping area near Grand Teton National Park. According to information later compiled during the investigation, Brian left the Spread Creek area on August 28 and traveled around the region. On August 29, witnesses separately reported giving Brian rides while he was hitchhiking. One of the women who picked him up was Miranda Baker. She said Brian told her that his fiancée was back at the van and that he had been camping in the area. Another woman, Norma Jean Jalovec, also reported giving him a ride toward the Spread Creek area. These witness accounts later became significant because they helped investigators reconstruct Brian's movements during the period when Gabby was no longer known to be alive. On August 30, Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt, received a text message from Gabby's phone that immediately concerned her. The message referred to Gabby's grandfather by his first name, something her mother reportedly considered unusual. The FBI later stated that, after Gabby's death, several text messages between Brian's and Gabby's phones appeared intended to create the impression that Gabby was still alive. Investigators also determined that Brian used Gabby's debit card without authorization while traveling back toward Florida between August 30 and September 1. According to the FBI, these actions became part of the evidence showing that attempts had been made to mislead investigators about Gabby's whereabouts. Brian began driving back toward Florida without Gabby. On September 1, 2021, he arrived at his parents' home in Northport, Florida, driving the white Ford Transit van that he and Gabby had used for the trip. Gabby was not with him. This became one of the most shocking facts in the entire case. Brian had returned home from Wyoming, traveling thousands of kilometers away from the area where Gabby had last been known to be, yet he did not provide Gabby's family with an explanation about where she was. Meanwhile, Gabby's family was becoming increasingly alarmed. From September 1 to September 7, her mother repeatedly attempted to contact her without receiving a response. By September 9, Gabby's parents realized that neither of them had heard from her. They contacted friends and eventually reached out to Brian's family. Gabby's mother sent messages to Brian's mother, Roberta Laundrie, while Gabby's father also attempted to contact the Laundrie family. They did not receive the answers they desperately wanted about Gabby's whereabouts. On September 11, 2021, Gabby's family officially reported her missing. Authorities visited the Laundrie family home in Florida. According to later accounts of the police visit, Brian's parents indicated that their son was at home but directed officers to their attorney and declined to provide further information about Gabby. The fact that Brian had returned with the van but Gabby was missing caused public attention to grow rapidly. Gabby's family began making emotional appeals for help, asking anyone who had seen Gabby, Brian or the distinctive white van to contact authorities. The case quickly exploded across social media and television. Thousands of people began following the investigation, sharing Gabby's photographs and searching through their own videos and travel photographs for possible clues. The FBI later said that the public's involvement was invaluable and that investigators received thousands of tips. The attention helped authorities gather information about the couple's movements and identify people who had encountered them during the trip. Investigators focused heavily on Wyoming, particularly the area around Grand Teton National Park and the Spread Creek dispersed camping area. Search teams examined remote wilderness locations where the couple had been connected to their final days together. Gabby's stepfather, Jim Schmidt, traveled to Wyoming to assist in the search effort. The investigation involved federal, state and local authorities, and the search became increasingly urgent as more time passed without any confirmed sign of Gabby. On September 19, 2021, search teams made the discovery everyone had feared. Human remains were located at the Spread Creek dispersed camping area near where Gabby and Brian had previously been seen. The FBI later confirmed that the remains belonged to Gabby Petito. Her death was ruled a homicide. According to the FBI's final investigative update, the Teton County coroner concluded that Gabby died from blunt force injuries to the head and neck, with manual strangulation. Her remains were found approximately 3 weeks after her last known communication. The confirmation devastated Gabby's family and transformed the investigation. The search was no longer about finding a missing woman. Investigators now had to determine exactly what had happened to her and who was responsible. Attention immediately focused on Brian because he was the last person believed to have seen her alive and had returned to Florida without her. However, before investigators could fully question him about Gabby's disappearance, Brian himself disappeared. His Ford Mustang was recovered on September 15 from the area around the T. Mabry Carlton Jr. Memorial Reserve and Myakkahatchee Creek Park in Florida. On September 17, Brian's parents formally reported him missing after authorities conducted a welfare check at their home. They said he had gone into the wilderness area and had not returned. A massive search began for Brian. The reserve was an extremely difficult environment to search, covering a large area with dense vegetation and areas affected by flooding. Law enforcement agencies spent weeks looking for him. The public followed every development closely, and there were numerous unconfirmed reports and possible sightings. Despite the enormous effort, authorities could not initially find Brian. On September 23, a federal warrant was issued for Brian Laundrie in connection with the unauthorized use of Gabby's debit card. This was not a homicide charge, but it allowed federal authorities to pursue him while the investigation into Gabby's death continued. The FBI had determined that Brian had used Gabby's card while traveling from Wyoming back to Florida. The search for Brian continued into October. On October 20, 2021, a major development occurred when Brian's parents went to the park area to help search locations they believed he may have visited. Law enforcement officers were present when they found an item later determined to belong to Brian. Investigators then searched the surrounding area more carefully and discovered human remains, along with Brian's backpack, a notebook and other belongings. The remains were later confirmed to be Brian's. The discovery of the notebook became one of the most important developments in the case. Although it had been exposed to the environment, investigators were able to examine it. The FBI later stated that Brian had written statements in the notebook claiming responsibility for Gabby's death. After reviewing the available evidence and following investigative leads, the FBI concluded that no other person was directly involved in Gabby's death. Because Brian died before he could face prosecution, there was never a criminal trial where prosecutors could present all of the evidence before a jury. This meant that some aspects of the exact sequence of events may never be fully established in court. However, the FBI officially concluded its investigation by identifying Brian as the only person directly involved in Gabby's death. The investigation did not end all legal disputes surrounding the case. Gabby's family later pursued civil action involving the Laundrie family and their attorney, arguing that they had suffered emotional distress. In February 2024, Gabby's parents reached a confidential settlement with Brian's parents and their attorney, avoiding a civil trial. A separate wrongful death lawsuit had previously resulted in a $3 million settlement, with Gabby's family indicating that money received would go toward the Gabby Petito Foundation. The Gabby Petito case became so significant partly because of the dramatic contrast between appearance and reality. The social media posts showed beautiful scenery, affection and an exciting road trip. The YouTube video made their life appear peaceful and carefree. Yet within weeks, Gabby was missing, and the person traveling with her had returned home alone. The case became a major example of how social media can show only carefully selected moments rather than the full reality of someone's life. The case also sparked major conversations about relationship abuse, how police respond to domestic disputes and how missing person cases are investigated. The Moab police stop became especially important because it occurred only weeks before Gabby's death. People studied the footage and questioned whether warning signs had been missed. The later review of the police response found mistakes, which added another complicated layer to the public discussion surrounding Gabby's case. Gabby's family has continued working to preserve her memory and to support causes connected to missing persons and relationship safety. Her story remains deeply tragic because she was a young woman with plans for her future, a love of travel and hopes of building a career around sharing her adventures. Her road trip began as an exciting opportunity to see the country and create a new life for herself. Instead, her disappearance became an international mystery followed by millions of people. The most shocking sequence of the case remains the fact that Gabby disappeared while traveling with Brian. Brian returned to Florida alone in the van. Gabby's family desperately searched for answers. Gabby's remains were discovered in Wyoming, and Brian then disappeared before investigators could question him fully. His remains were eventually found in Florida, together with a notebook containing written statements that the FBI said showed him claiming responsibility. In the end, the FBI's investigation concluded that Brian Laundrie was the only person directly involved in Gabby Petito's death. Yet because he was never brought to trial, Gabby's family did not have the opportunity to see the case argued in a courtroom. The Gabby Petito case remains one of the most memorable and heartbreaking true crime cases in recent history, not only because of the mystery surrounding her disappearance, but because of the warning signs, the enormous public search and the contrast between the happy life shown online and the tragic reality that followed. Thank you for watching. If you want more factual and respectful true crime content, please like, subscribe, and share. And as always, stay safe.